Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joe Chavez. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I hail from the great state of Hawaii. We are Oxford House is alive and well and strong on the island of Oahu. I've been involved with Oxford House since I moved in on May 20th, 1992. I've been employed by this fine establishment since February 1993. It is it's no small task to be up here, and we'd like to welcome our panelists, and starting with Dan Hahn from Oxford House, State Coordinator from Oklahoma. The illustrious Curtis Taylor, the Oxford House alumni and Executive Director of ADCNC, North Carolina. Michael McCune, Oxford House alumni, Outreach in Florida. It's our newest state. We're anxious to hear all your stuff. Jason Wilson, Oxford House resident and Reentry Coordinator, North Carolina. Jesse. What did I say? Jesse. And Ann Cleveland, Oxford House alumni, Outreach, Virginia. Over 3/4 of Oxford House population has done some jail time or prison time. In America today, approximately 60% of those in jail or prisons are addicted to alcohol and or drugs. Each year, thousands of those who are incarcerated re-enter society. However, within 1 year of re-entry, about half those individuals will commit another crime and head to conviction and re-entry into incarceration. The experience of those who enter Oxford House following incarceration or drug court intervention is usually long-term recovery and crime-free behavior. In some states, Oxford House has developed relationships with programs that permit those leaving incarceration to go straight to an Oxford House. Other residents come to Oxford House at the recommendation of drug courts and or parole officers who have found that clients tend to do well if they live in an Oxford House. Not only does such intervention motivate clients to begin to master the recovery process, it also saves taxpayers the cost of incarceration and recidivism. Oxford House residents who enter Oxford House from incarceration are exposed to participatory democracy rather than institutional authority. They are elected to leadership positions and undertake shared responsibility for the operation of the house. Most residents rise to the occasion. This kind of real-life training is rare for most individuals re-entering society. The panel will discuss the need for the post-incarceration recovery opportunities, practical ways to facilitate getting individuals leaving incarceration into an Oxford House, how Oxford Houses can help drug court clients achieve long-term sobriety and meet the expectation of drug courts, and how Oxford House living facilities facilitates and transitions to long-term crime-free recovery for most residents. The panelists are all experienced in the field from the inside and the outside. Our first speaker will be Mr. Dan Hahn. You got 10 minutes.
Good morning, my name is Dan and I'm an alcoholic. Been clean and sober since July 18th of 2007. And I was incredibly lucky to stumble into an Oxford House. Can we all agree on that? To talk a little bit about reentry, and when you discuss reentry, I've been involved with it a long time, and how I ended up there is constant cycling in and out of the system with a plan to do something different, and every time back in prison. And I was able to find recovery in an Oxford House. And I lived in an area years ago that we didn't really have any direction on how to get people out of prison. And if there's, and reentry is not just prison. Reentry is folks that are reentering society, whether it's in any capacity, from homelessness, whatever area it is. If it's a homeless shelter that you have a relationship with, getting people back into society. And it takes a village. It takes all of us pitching in together to understand that there's folks that need our help. And it's not because they don't have money or clothes on their back. We don't want them because they don't fit us. We're going to lift them up. And that's what my life is centered around, my passion, lifting people up and getting them in a position and giving them something they never thought possible. Living in a home, getting into an environment where they can practice a stable program of recovery right away. And that's done by example. So coming out of prison, there's a lot of things we don't have. I work in Oklahoma today, and most of the guys that we get that come out have nothing more than a Walmart sack. And so how do we accept folks like that into an Oxford house and point them towards success? And it's giving them a hand up and realizing that most all of us, whether we've been incarcerated or not, have committed felonies, whether we were convicted for them or not. Some of us just got caught. It took me 25 years to realize that I'm just not a very good criminal. And through that process, Oxford House is a prime place to work with drug courts, incarceration, homelessness. But what it takes is some basic things. I work a lot in the Oxford House community, and houses will say things like, well, he doesn't have any money. Well, okay, I teach houses all the time, build yourself up some money and hold people accountable. Folks move into our houses. I work with people out of incarceration all the time, and I'll sit down with them and just tell them what they're about to experience. Here's what's okay in Oxford House, and I think we can all agree on this. It's perfectly okay to do your chore. It's okay. We like that, right? And we like you to put a money order in the box. And we like you to be employed, right? We like you to be employed. And we would like you to work a program of recovery of your understanding, okay? And those are non-negotiable. What I see often is folks move into our homes and they're not explained clearly what's expected of them because the people that are explaining it to them have either not been there or don't understand. So it's our job to get out and teach people what it takes to live in an Oxford house. We deserve a second chance as the formerly incarcerated, okay? And the key component is that Oxford House is not a shelter for abstinence, it's a home for recovery, okay? We are not there to provide somebody a place to live until something gets better. We are there to provide them a place to work a program of recovery. So some things that folks can do to help reentry in their area is building relationships with your local probation and parole, giving them tours of the houses, showing them what it is that we do and then what we require. It's not a place to lay your head. It's a place to get better, okay? And throughout the drug courts, all of those things, I just feel like our primary focus sometimes gets a little bit muddled, and we just need to focus on those basic things. Those basic things. Work a program of recovery and do the basic things that it takes to live in our homes. So I don't have a whole lot more today. I want to turn it over, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Our next speaker is no stranger from the insider or the out. And please welcome Curtis Taylor.
Thank you, Joe. Was that your polite way of saying I'm a convict? Man, I get to speak at a lot of places, and I gotta say that having the opportunity to speak at an Oxford House World Convention, it's the highlight. It's one of the highlights of my life because, see, right here, I'm at home. Yeah. This is my family. Yeah. What's up, Justin? My man. So, my name is Curtis Taylor, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me is that I have not used alcohol or any other substance in over 16 years now. Yeah. Yeah. I found this thing called recovery. I found this thing called Oxford House by God's grace and mercy way back in 1996. You do the quick math, you're like, well, you just said it's only been roughly 16 years. Well, I had a little more research to do. But you know, I did the math earlier this morning, right? And so since 1996, I've been in sustained recovery all but about 8, maybe 9 months out of that. That's 23 years. And only 8 to 9 months of that was I not engaged fully in recovery. That in and of itself speaks volumes. Because see, once this Oxford House thing gets in your blood, the streets will never be the same. You'll never be the same. So, the last time that the disease of substance use disorder exhibited itself in my life, or should I say I exhibited the symptoms of this particular illness, I found myself facing 2 felony charges. Now, I'd been in the county jail. I grew up in the county jail. Let's just put it like that. But I'd never been in Department of Corrections, in prison. Well, this time, there was no way for me to avoid a prison sentence. And I went to prison. There's more to that story, but we don't have time for it. But I went on into prison, and I came home May 25th, 2004, with absolutely nothing. I didn't even have a change of underwear. I was wearing the white uniform that the kitchen workers from the prison wore because I did not have a change of clothes. Lo and behold, Kathleen Gibson, your wonderful chief operating officer from Oxford House, was in the parking lot of that prison that day. I had no idea she even knew that it was my release date, but she did. She'd been keeping up with me. And she was there, and I walked over to her truck. I said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Look, my husband," her husband is Keith, y'all know Keith. "My husband and I, we've been talking about you and praying about you, and we decided that you're gonna come and stay with us for a few days. Don't worry about nothing, come on, get in the truck. It's gonna be all right." So Dan talked about what the things that we don't have coming home from prison. That's a long list. I didn't have anything. Fortunately, a dear friend of mine helped support me and provide me with some of those things. But one of the most important things that she and Keith and their beautiful little daughter, Lexi, provided me with was understanding. They weren't judging me. They invited me and welcomed me, a convicted felon fresh out of prison, into their home, and they fed me and they clothed me and they loved me. And I spent a few days, I don't know, maybe a week or so there. And then Kathleen set me up an interview at Oxford House Crosslink. And Oxford House Crosslink had been giving her a fit for about 18 months. And so she was strategically placing me in Oxford House Crosslink to help fix it. So I went from there to the kind of, speaking to people about my prison experience, and Kathleen and I developed this thing called a reentry coordinator. We created a position out of thin air, and all of a sudden I had a job with Oxford House. How about that? And so what I need to say is that, so while I was in prison, I saw so many people, so many men, so many Polaroid pictures of men's children. And I couldn't help but think to myself, what's happening with those kids while we're all locked up in this cage? And so God began to instill in my heart this passion. Because see, how many thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people are coming home from prison every day that don't have a Kathleen Gibson in the parking lot? How many of those people never heard of Oxford House? See, it's plain and simple, right? Back in, 1971, I think it was, this man named Richard Nixon declared war. He declared a war on drugs. Now, what he was really doing was declaring a war on people. He was declaring a war on an illness, a people suffering from an illness. And they got together and they said, okay, let's do it like this. We're going to take these people suffering from substance use disorder. We're going to give them enough rope to hang themselves and let them commit various crimes. And as soon as they do, we're going to jump on them. And we're going to cuff them and we're going to lock them up in a cage like an animal. In the meantime, we're going to make sure that there is absolutely no treatment available to these people, no help. And to make sure that this big money-making machine that we call mass incarceration, to make sure that it continues to be viable, we're going to label these folks. We're going to call them felons. We're going to call them ex-convicts. See, it's real easy to discriminate against, to judge somebody, to justify your discriminatory behavior when you put a label on somebody. You know, that's why on certain news channels you hear that word illegals and things of that nature. It makes it real easy to just cast these folks off into the garbage and forget that these are actual living, breathing human beings, just like you and I. Let me ask you a question. How many of y'all been arrested? Let me ask you another question. How many of y'all been to prison? All those hands, right? Oh, let me put my hand up, right? Now, I'm in long-term recovery now for a long time, right? I'm a business owner. I'm the freaking executive director of the Alcohol Drug Council of North Carolina. I was the very first, as far as I know, the very first on a national level paid reentry coordinator for Oxford House. The very first. During my years with Oxford House, I opened some 40-odd new Oxford houses, and I helped place somewhere around, 1,000 people. Somewhere around there, right, Justin? And that's just me, right? All your hands went up. Obviously, you're not in prison today. You're not using today. So each and every last one of you that put your hand up, you have a different story to tell about yourself today. You're doing incredible things in your community. We just don't have time to hear all about it, right? But I guarantee you that not one of us will stand up here and say that going to prison is what eventually helped us achieve recovery. Now, it may have been an excellent treatment program in that prison or something like that, but you shouldn't have to go to prison to get good treatment. Locking me up like an animal, caging me up like an animal, taking away all of my dignity, all of my human rights, dressing me in some raggedy old little orange jumpsuit, making me wear flip-flops and making me strip butt naked and strip search me every time I come back off that road squad, swinging a bush axe, while you make millions off the backs of incarcerated Americans. America incarcerates more people than any civilized country in the world. I think we heard earlier today, 4% of the world's population, 25% or more of the world's prison population. It's not hard to figure out. So Richard Nixon, he declared a war on drugs. Well, my name's Curtis Taylor, and I'm officially declaring a war against mass incarceration. Me and my Oxford House family We declare war against stigma. We declare war against discrimination. We refuse to sit back and watch our brothers and sisters continue to be caged up like wild animals, treated like dogs. A person suffering from substance use disorder, they need help. They need treatment. They need detox. They need residential. They need inpatient, outpatient. They, of course, need Oxford House. They need a doggone job. How you gonna call me a convicted felon and then say, oh, nah, you can't get no, we can't hire you because you got a felony. We can't rent this apartment to you because you got a felony. My son don't care nothing about me having no felony. He hungry, he needs something to eat. You know, addiction can be a real dark place. When I was a little kid, some of you probably had the same experience. I remember being afraid of the dark at some point. And the thing that I recognized is that the very second that you flipped on that light switch, the dark ran away and the light took over. Well, I consider mass incarceration and the way we treat each other as a society as a darkness. And I'm proud to stand up here this morning and say that Oxford House is that light. Oxford House is that light. So to my Oxford House family, y'all know I wouldn't stand up here and not remind you folks. Don't you dare look down your nose and judge your brother or your sister. Don't you dare sit up in the house and not answer that daggone telephone. Don't you dare sit up in that house and vote no at an interview because, oh, he got convicted of a B&E and we don't want no thieves in our house. Who you think you are? Dan already said you might not have got caught, but you did plenty. Even if it was driving a 5,000-pound vehicle, drunk as a skunk, that's a crime. So don't get it twisted. You're not better than me. You're not better than anybody. And guess what? I'm not better than you. None of us are. We're all imperfect human beings trying to do the best that we can on a daily basis. So let's cut out this nonsense. Let's shut down the prison system. Let's close it. Let's close it. Let's take some of that money and fix some of these raggedy streets in Washington, D.C. I'm sure I'm over my time, but I mean, there's so much more that I could say, man. But, you know, this reentry thing is powerful. It's powerful. My life today is dedicated to making sure that the next man and the next woman have the same opportunities that I've been given. Because I fully understand that if I got everything I deserved, I couldn't handle it. I would bust hell wide open a long time ago. It's God's grace and mercy that I'm standing here today. So as a result, I'm obligated, I'm committed, I'm dedicated to turning around and making sure that I'm being a Kathleen Gibson for somebody. Ask yourself, who are you being Kathleen Gibson for today? Who are you helping? Who are you making sure got a nice change of clothes or can get a haircut to get ready to go to that next job interview? Who are you doing that for? Or are you so caught up on Facebook or worrying about meeting your next baby mama that you ain't got time? That you ain't got time. You know, man, y'all are beautiful, by the way. Oxford House is an incredible thing. I thank Paul Malloy and Kathleen and John Fox for giving me an opportunity to work for such an incredible organization for so many years. I thank you guys for your continued support as my journey continues. But one thing I'll leave you with, if this convicted felon, I know I've been arrested over 60 some odd times in my life. I can remember getting out of jail, out of the county jail in the morning and being back that night. Yeah. So if I can go through all that, and on May 11, 2019, graduate from Shaw University, summa cum laude with my bachelor's in social work. If I can become executive director of an agency, if I can most importantly be a father to my beautiful daughter and my wonderful son, you can too. Thank you.
Very powerful. And the beauty of Oxford House, just so you know, and I said, Curtis and I probably stand on opposite ends of the spectrum in our philosophy of what constitutes, fair and liberal punishment. But the one thing that we both agree on is the light of Oxford House. And, I tell this to guys when I go to House meetings and there's problems. Where else in our lifetime have we ever sat at a table and discussed issues in a calm manner, some heavyweight issues, but no one's getting loud, no one's screaming, no one's getting slapped, everybody, is behaving themselves, but Oxford House taught me that. It taught us that we can communicate and we can share ideas, and you don't have to agree with everyone, but certainly you have to respect everyone's point of view. And it's powerful, Curtis, powerful. Our next speaker will be Mr. Michael McKeon from Outreach, Florida.
Well, hello. This is a great honor to be able to speak here. I don't know how I'm going to follow that, though. So I've been clean and sober since July 15th, 2016. I moved into an Oxford house in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I had a trash bag and a moving fee, and that was it. The guys brought me into the house, and very early on, I started seeing people getting their lives together. I started seeing people getting their kids back. I saw people get college degrees. I saw people get good jobs and cars and just getting things back in life. And early on, I was really on the fence about my recovery. I didn't know that this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I didn't know if I wanted to use again. But I started going to meetings with these guys. I started just really getting involved with the whole accountability of the houses and the chapter, and eventually go on to the work with the regional association. And it just motivated me so much. It was exactly what I needed after serving 7.5 years in prison. I was formerly known as 155593 in the Mississippi Department of Corrections. And today I work for Oxford House as a senior outreach coordinator for Florida. It was a huge fluke as how I got into an Oxford House. The case manager I was working with didn't know where to send me. I was asking about different halfway houses in the area, and she's like, "You do not want to go to any of those. Are not for you, Michael. Don't go there." One day, I was at a community work center. I came back in from work, and she said, "I heard about this place called Oxford House. I don't know what it is, but we can do an interview." I did the interview over the phone with the guys just sitting in their office. They accepted me. I didn't know what I was going to walk into. I didn't know what to expect, but it worked. I got in the house. I got out of prison, made my parole, and got in. And I think that the biggest holdup is that the different case managers, transition specialists, these people don't know about Oxford House. If they did, could you imagine the amount of people's lives that we could change if every single case managers, transition specialists knew about Oxford House. And I just really hope in the future that we can really work contracting with DOCs in all 50 states, that we could really work having our reentry coordinators and people that have stepped up into a leadership role work with all these people in all these different prisons across the country so that we can solve this problem. Could you imagine the statistic of individuals re-entering, living in an Oxford house, as opposed to the individuals moving in to their grandma's house or their mom's house or to some other place for recidivism? I think Dr. Kelly said the number of recidivism rates in an Oxford house is two-thirds less than what it is as opposed to a different different situation. So I ask you, as members of Oxford House, to really get out there and work with the prison reentry, work with these transition specialists, work with the parole, probation officers, work with anybody that is going to help these individuals find a place to go after they leave prison. Thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Michael. Our next speaker is the Reentry Coordinator for the state of North Carolina, Mr. Jesse Wilson.
A lot of hope in here. Once upon a time, somebody was telling us he or she ain't never going to change. Look at us. I'm Jesse Wilson. I'm a man in long-term recovery. What that means for me is I haven't had a drink or drug since January 21st of 2018. Because of people like Curtis Taylor and Justin Lozier that paved the way for me, I'm able to help people like me. Looking back on my life, when I was a younger man, 8 or 9 years old, I was very mischievous. Ended up drinking at 9 years old, smoking marijuana at 10, doing cocaine and meth at 13. Started selling drugs at 17, lost my dad to an accidental overdose. I was with him, so I was heading to prison early. Whenever I got to prison, I was 1494007 inmate. That's who I was. That's not who I am today. Once upon a time, they wouldn't let me see my son. I was a drug dealing maniac. I liked to get violent. That's who I was. I was a street guy. They wouldn't let me see my son. Now they let me pick him up from school today. Of course, there is a process, and I tell you, in North Carolina, the prisons love us. They love Curtis Taylor. They love Justin Lozier. Now they love me. There is a process. Whenever I receive an email from the case manager, I do send that reentry application, a 5-page application that goes into great detail. I send the Oxford manual, and I tell them, have them read this, because I will be asking about this. Then, after I get it back, I conduct my phone interview. Longest phone interview I've had was about almost 2 hours long. I get real into it. I'm telling you the truth. I tell them a piece of my story. I let them know you're not talking to somebody behind a desk. I know I'm in a suit now, but I tell them, look, I'm a regular guy that's trying to stay sober, that's been to prison, that's wore them brown clothes just like you. And it lets them open up to me. I let them know it doesn't matter what gang you may claim. It don't matter what you've done in your past. It don't matter to me, because gangbanging in prison is real, and it doesn't matter to me. I want to see your desire to change, your willingness to do what it takes to stay clean and sober. That's what matters to me. When I got out of prison, I went back home. I relapsed that day. Who relapsed the day they walked out of prison? It's real. So I found Oxford House, and this guy tried to hug me right off the gate, and I said, don't hug me. He's like, do you shake hands? I said, that's it, though. I was that guy. We was talking about that the other day. But these guys love me, man. These guys love me, and I did end up going back home and relapse, and I said, I got to go back to my real home, which is an Oxford house. I got to get a real sponsor and work some real steps, you know. And I let them know, like, and a lot of times on my interviews, it sounds really good. And I'm like, and I get real with them. Like, I'm professional with the case managers, but I'm real with the guys trying to get into an Oxford house. I'm like, this sounds really good. If you do this, man, you heading to the top. But the only person that's going to do it is you. Ain't nobody going to do it for you. And the things that I'm writing down is the things I'm advocating and telling houses what you're planning on doing. And if you don't do that, you will be held accountable for that. I give them the rundown. I tell them what to expect. You know, I've done over 130 phone interviews. I placed real close to 100 people in 9 months. So I go hard for this because I relapsed whenever I got out of prison, but it doesn't have to happen. You know, I got, out of them close to 100 people I placed, I got 20 contacts in my phone of people I know that's still around. You know, I try to put them into strong houses to set them up for success, you know. I've had people say, well, we've done accepted 2 people that we got burned. I said, that doesn't mean that the third one won't succeed. You know? We was given a chance, so let's give back. I've went all over the state advocating at chapter meetings, setting up reentry subcommittees, me and Justin, you know, following up, you know, talking for people that's behind them walls that ain't got a voice for themselves yet. You know, that's what I do. And I love it, man. You know, and I let them guys know, like, they're afraid. I hear the desire. They're afraid to go back to where they came from, you know. Because like an old man told me one time, if you continue doing what you've always done, you will continue being who you've always been. But on the flip side of that coin, if you want to become someone you've never been, you have to begin doing things you've never done. That's where we come in. Talking about had a bag of clothes, talking about didn't have a change of underwear. When I first got this job, I was getting donations, putting them in my trunk, taking them all over the state to people. You wouldn't believe the difference it makes to see somebody, because a lot of people that I'm placing told me they don't have no family. They ain't got nobody. I say, you do now, you know? This ain't a job to me. I mean, yeah, I get paid for it, but I love what I do. I love what I do. I love sitting down and doing an interview with somebody and letting them know that I'm here to help them. You know, hey, and don't get me wrong, I said over 130 interviews and placed 100 people. I got to deny some people. It ain't just for some people. Some people just ain't for us, an Oxford house, you know, and that's unfortunate, but that's the truth. You know, if you're not showing any willingness and you're not listening to what I'm saying, then we're not going to waste no more time here. Because, you know, just like I tell people in houses, if you're not serious about your recovery, then you're in somebody's bed that's going to be. I'm just being real. You know, and everybody deserves a chance. I do love reentry, and people do change their lives like all of us here. You know, thank you guys. That's all I got.
Thank you, Jesse. We'll have a special, well, our next speaker is Annie Cleveland from Outreach, Virginia. Just want you to know that her parents came down here to see her with her daughter.
Good morning. My name is Annie Cleveland. I am a woman in long-term recovery, and what that means to me is I haven't felt the need to put a mood or mind-altering substance in my body since April 23rd of 2015, and for that I'm super blessed and honored to be here with all these panelists. It's really hard to follow, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself and what I've found works for me. I am one of 13 Washington State outreach workers. Washington State, over 300 strong. Yeah. So I work in 6 different counties. I work with 6 different drug courts, and I work with prisons and jails all across Washington State. One of the biggest things that I have found is establishing that positive, communication. You can be a liaison between the houses and these entities, you know what I mean? And you're there to help change people's lives. So that's one of the main things I do is I go to those drug court graduations. I meet with the compliance officers. I sit down with the judges. And I also sit down with my housemates and my members. And I, am present for drug court graduations, there to support them. And that's some of the things that they need. Oxford House thrives because of our integrity, and it helps participants adhere to policies and stipulations of the program that they are trying to complete. We hold each other accountable, we lead by example, and we love people until they can love themselves. Leadership for me among peers is very important in meeting our challenges. Drug court strongly encourages their participants to live in Oxford houses because they know that they stand a better chance of recovery than any place else. Making it through a drug court program is not an easy task, but living with a group of people who understand and are working through their life challenges and support one another is a paramount for success. So I'm grateful to be a Washington State outreach worker, and I'm very grateful to help bridge the gap between drug court, parole, and reentry. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Our next speaker will be the CEO of the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. Please welcome Mr. Carson Fox.
Well, I'm at a disadvantage because y'all know plenty of people on the panel, but you don't know me. And you're probably wondering why I'm here and how I got involved in what I'm doing, and everyone's had a little time to tell a story, so I'll tell you a short story. So I'm not in recovery, but I was, well, let me ask you this. How many of y'all ever played with Matchbox cars when you were little? All right, so, yeah, let's give a hand for the Matchbox cars. Love them. Well, I'm a long, long way from playing with Matchbox cars. But when I was a little kid, a friend of mine grew up with him. We played with Matchbox cars. And that's what you did when you were a little boy, right? Played with Matchbox cars. And we lived across the street from each other. And kind of similar households, similar everything. He got involved in alcohol and drugs, and I got involved in alcohol when we were both very young. For whatever reason, his path was different than my path. And he had, honestly, with his family, he had a lot more resources than my family had. And they tried. They threw every resource at him they could. I'm 51 now. He would be 49. My guess is of his 49 years, he spent 20 to 25 in prison. So later on, I became a prosecutor. And I didn't want to be a lifetime prosecutor. I wanted to be a lawyer. But a prosecutor, when you're young guy to law school, a lot of lawyers go into prosecution because you get court work. And they asked me to help start a drug court there. There wasn't a drug court there. They said, "Can you start this?" And I started researching what it was, and it looked like it was actually helping people. And I said, "Sure." And it's weird. A lot of my friends, after I started doing that, I was like, "I think I want to make this a career." And they were like, "Are you crazy? You can go on and practice law." And I'm like, "No, I think I want to do this." So what I'm here to ask y'all for is help, and Annie touched on this too. There's about 4,000 treatment courts in the country, and so they're drug courts, which many of you might know of. We also have veterans courts where veterans come in, and veterans might have alcohol and drug problems. They might also have like PTSD or traumatic brain injury. And we're moving to a place where most of the folks in drug courts now are treatment courts in the country. They're not in there for like a possession charge. They're in there for a charge that's driven by drugs, right? They're in there because, like my friend that I grew up with, but before he was ever arrested the first time, he other things happened. My parents woke up in the middle of the night and he was in their bedroom rifling through my mom's purse. Because if you remember, for those of you who are around my age, 25 or 30 years ago, or when I was a kid, that was 40 years ago, in a lot of communities in the U.S., nobody locked their doors. My parents actually would get pissed off at us if I had to wash the car and I pulled it into a certain place and washed it, but I didn't leave the keys in the ignition. They got mad with me because how are you going to find the keys if they're not in the ignition? So everybody left their keys in the ignition and you left your doors unlocked. So he's in the house going in the middle of the night going through her purse. And, well, a lot of the folks that I dealt with as a prosecutor too, and this is one thing I need your help with, is that a lot of folks understand what y'all understand. And I explain to people, I'll talk to people sometimes, and I was talking to somebody who had worked in our field for a while, not too long ago, and I said, recently I was in a drug court, and it was interesting because not a single participant in that whole drug court had a drug charge. Not one person had a drug or alcohol charge, and they couldn't understand what I was talking about. And I said, they're all there because drugs and alcohol are issues they have driven them into the justice system. And it's interesting. I was we had a big conference last summer, this summer, and then last summer. And last summer, my sister came. She came to the conference. She was able to come. It was kind of on her own. She wanted to see what it was I did. And my sister's one of those people, and maybe all of y'all have friends or family member that does this. She's one of those people who, she wants to hug every dolphin, and she'd probably stop her car to hug a tree. But she heard stories of graduates who stood up in front of people, and there was this one young woman who was a graduate who spoke at our conference, and when she finished drug court, she had 18 felonies, and these weren't drug possession felonies, these were felonies. And she finished drug court, and now she runs a treatment facility. And my sister, this is where I'm going to close with the story. So my sister, afterwards, she told me, she said, she likes what I do, but she says, honestly, I'll tell you this, not understanding the system, I don't know that I would have given this person another chance. And what I need y'all's help on is that a lot of folks don't understand that. They don't understand that the folks in drug courts in the country, more and more of these folks are having charges they're not drug and alcohol charges. They're charges where they have victims, but I can tell you when you talk to people, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. You've already had to raise your hands for a bunch of stuff here today. But I can tell you, having worked in the system and working in drug courts, a lot of the times the victims that people have, the people who would, if you're in a drug court, for example, if you're paying restitution to folks, those victims are who? Like in my friend's case, family, neighbors, employers, and friends. In my friend's case, it was a neighbor and a friend. And it's like, and when Carl was talking, people aren't disposable. And that's a message that that y'all can help me with, is to get folks to understand that. To get folks to understand that there's folks in the system, there's folks, for example, that are living in the communities. I mean, and if y'all aren't familiar with drug court, the whole idea of it is you don't send people to prison. More often than not now, the folks in drug courts don't have drug charges. They have charges where there's some supervision because they owe restitution. They might have long criminal records. They may have criminal records that are pages and pages long, but you're giving them a chance and you're trying to get them connected to recovery. It's about connecting these folks to recovery. And I need y'all to help me with that. I need y'all to help with that understanding, because there's a lot of folks that when they think about people in recovery, and they think about people finding recovery, and they think about people who have charges, they think about just drug or alcohol charges. They don't think about other charges. It doesn't enter their mind. And it needs to enter their mind. I've already said finally once, I'll say finally again. A big push that we've been making recently is that we found out there's research out there, and this may or may not surprise you. It looks like, depending on the state that you're in the United States, that we talked about the number of folks in prison, that in some states over 50% of the people in state prison are there because they were revoked from probation. And the reason that most of those folks were revoked is because they had a technical violation. And those technical violations, most of them have to do with what? Thank you. And so what's critical also for folks to understand, in the push that we're making is that if you have a drug court in your community and what someone has shown you is they basically need more services and a higher level of care, why put them in prison? Why not offer them more services and a higher level of care? Why are maybe in some states over 50% of the people in prison people who, when the judge first sentenced them, that judge decided you're not a threat to public safety. You can be out in the community. What you need is treatment. But when that person relapses and can't make it, at some point in time down the road, that person is sent to prison, but they have done nothing else to show that they're a threat to the community. So why? Why not keep them in the community and give them those more services and give them that extra step they need? And that's something that we're working on. But I can tell you it's a heavy lift, because you could be talking about 1 million folks behind bars who should probably still be in their communities, receiving treatment, community-based, still in contact with their families, and that's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift to get folks to understand that, because a lot of people don't. I was surprised with my sister that she didn't understand it. I was surprised with folks. You know, my sister obviously has known me for quite some time, but she didn't understand that a lot of the folks coming into drug court have more than drug charges. They have more than alcohol charges. So I just need y'all keep keeping up the fight, keep doing the good work. The guy I know, I grew up with, somebody told me while I was back home on a visit in the last couple of years, and they asked me about him, and they said, do you think that his life would have been different if back then, 25 years ago, we had a program like that? And I said, I don't know. I certainly would hope so. I'd like to hope so, since this is my life's work, that if we had had that, he would have had a different path. And our work at my organization is to ensure that as many people as possible are given the opportunity for that different path. And so I want to thank y'all for what you do. And if anybody ever has any questions for me, find me, ask me. I work every day of the year. And I love the work y'all do. Keep doing what you're doing. And I'll tell you this, the worst thing that I've had to do all week is to follow these people on this panel. Because these are fantastic, fantastic people. Thank you.
Okay, so we finished a little earlier, and we're going to open it up now for questions. So if you could line up, and please identify yourself with what house or what state you're from and what house.
I'm Brittany, Houston, Texas. So in Houston, we're trying to integrate reentry like really hard right now. We think it's a great idea, but I think people treat reentry the same way they treat MAT and MAR, or whatever it's called, and they're scared of it, right? So a lot of houses are closed off in Houston, like, oh no, we don't want to accept that person, like they're gonna burn, just same way they treat MAT, right? Which is, it's wrong, right? So what is a different approach maybe, like to offer these homes, these houses, like a reentry person, you know, because people are just really turned off to the idea of reentry. We do have a few reentry success stories. There's actually one here with us today, and like, so it works, you know. It's just a lot of houses are closed off, and I just want to know if there's like a different word we can use than reentry, or I don't know if that makes sense to y'all.
Does anybody want to answer that? We've got several answers for you.
Okay.
I'll take a stab at it. I mean, my first inclination is to grab a baseball bat and start beating the heck out of people. I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, you know, you saw it. We asked how many people in here, you know, have spent time incarcerated, and the whole room raised their hand. If you went back to those houses, it'd be the same result. So it sounds like to me it's just a simple case of people forgetting where they come from. You know, we stumble into recovery. We get a haircut, take a shower and a half, get a cheap bottle of cologne, and all of a sudden, you know, we forget laying on that prison bunk. We forget when it was time for us to come home, all those prayers and the hoping and the wishing, and God help me stay clean. God help me find a job. God, please allow somebody to welcome me somewhere so I can have a sense of belonging somewhere. We forget about all that, and we become better than. And that's a sickness in and of itself. I guess all you can really do, man, is just keep pushing the message, keep holding up your corner of the world, so to speak, and keep being that example. And I suppose whatever, like most states, well, I know Texas, y'all are crazy in Texas. Y'all eat a lot together, and so at those events, the more you can put a reentry success story out in front, maybe make them the keynote for those events. Make them, you know, get them to start getting elected to a lot of the positions and whatnot and take leadership roles, and maybe that'll help turn the tide.
One of the things I wanted to add to that too is you were asking, is there a different name for them? There is, Oxford House resident. And do they want to stop using and stay stopped, as our tradition states that our primary purpose is? The easiest way to classify them differently is that they aren't different. Do they want to stop using drugs and stay stopped? And they're a member that wants to live in Oxford House.
And I'd like to add to that. There's like, not only with reentry, but a lot of times, you know, there will be some houses where someone has a illness, or, you know, they're gay or something. And I find that houses that seem to operate with a narrow mind, that education will bring it up, and just go there and explain the situation and remind everyone we're in recovery. And as long as we all start on the same page, we're all in recovery, then we can work miracles from there. But let us establish the fact that we are a house built on recovery, and all are welcomed. Yes?
Hi, my name is Angie. I'm from the Fort Worth, Texas area. I also sit on the Fort Worth Interchapter Reentry Committee of Oxford House. We are having an issue in Texas with parole-approved Oxford houses. We need some help getting our houses approved for parole and probation.
What is the essential problem?
We can't get our houses parole approved.
Do you have any of them approved?
We have maybe one in the Fort Worth area.
Do you know how that?
We have two. Sorry, we have two.
Do you know how those were approved?
By accident? A happy accident?
Well, they're saying up here that they require license. Is that accurate?
They have to all be individually approved. All the houses in Texas have to be individually approved, okay? So that's something each house has to address directly with probation and parole. They will not blanket approve a group of houses. That's Texas's rule. So if a house wants to get parole approved, they have to deal with it individually, every single house. And I think they have a lot of stipulations in place that we need to work on. They want to have a constant contact in the home. Mm-hmm. You guys have some obstacles that are going to be difficult to overcome because of Texas law. It's not your guys' fault at all.
Well, actually, Hawaii is the same way. And what we do is we open up a new house, or we have an existing house, and we'll invite the parole officer to come out and view the property, call the phone number. We'll call from the house so they have the number, and have them tour it. And then if it's satisfactory to them, and, you know, we fall into certain categories where, hey, you don't want it next to a school, or you don't want it here or there. Right. But that's on parole. That's not on Oxford House. And, they will approve. But they also found, they used to just blanket it. But then they had a shotgun approach to their clientele, and they had trouble monitoring those people. So they limited it to about 6 houses out of 30 that they will send their clients to, and then it's easier to manage on their end. So just call one of the parole officers, invite them to the house, have a cup of coffee, and show them the place. See if that works.
Thank you.
Good luck. Yes, sir.
How are you doing? Quentin Jackson, Austin, Texas, Collingsworth House. And my question, I have actually 2 questions, one for Curtis and the other for the gentleman, his counterpart that works for the state. I have 3 numbers, 6180, 640, 1942, 314, 1605, 212. And I'm also the Chapter 11 reentry coordinator, reentry chairman. So with Oxford House, what I've realized is as the reentry chairman, we have all these different positions. There's no really coordination with other reentry chairmen in other cities or anything like that. Could there be more on exactly what our job or what we could be doing? Because it's just kind of like a position that's, you have at a chapter meeting.
It's unique to that area, right?
Yeah.
And you're looking to expand it somewhat?
Yeah, to expand it, to help each other out. And then with Texas, we have a reentry division that is part of, the Board of Pardons and Paroles. And they really only have a presence while you're inside. There's no presence outside. Whenever you're released, they give you a packet with a bunch of numbers and homeless shelters, and that's it. And while you're inside, they get you your Social Security card, your ID, and your birth certificate, and that's it. What is the mission for you as in North Carolina? What exactly what would a state reentry person do, so that Mike can help me whenever, I'm in Austin, in the capital, whenever I, advocate more for reentry and, initiatives for people getting out of prison in the state of Texas. Thank you.
So you're asking, what more can you do as a subcommittee? Is that kind of what you're asking?
No, I'm with someone who is a reentry coordinator for at a state level. What exactly? I know you kind of mentioned things that meeting with other people. And whenever I see a guy doing that, what exactly is the hard data? They always want hard data. What exactly is a reentry coordinator for the state do? I don't know. I don't.
What does a so I help assist people transition out of incarceration upon release right into an Oxford house. The subcommittees that we have in North Carolina do help with the placements sometimes. They do help advocate. Me personally, yes, I do work the whole state, but if you're willing to, on your own, drive around and advocate, and like what was said earlier, like bringing success stories with you, just a couple things that we've done in our areas. We've got houses that donated clothes. People from the houses donate their old clothes. Of course, we don't get donations from everywhere because of bugs. But we've started reentry closets for people that's coming out of incarceration with no clothes. We help with that. My subcommittees, our subcommittees, they do help with placements and help guide me into the right direction of a good house, stuff like that. That's really all I really got for the subcommittees. Unless you want to start doing presentations on your own at like homeless shelters where people is getting released to. That's really one of my main jobs, is making sure somebody has a safe place to transition into and not a homeless shelter. So, Curtis,
I'm sorry, your name again?
Quentin Jackson.
Quentin. You want?
Quentin.
No.
Quentin.
Yes.
My name's
yes, sir.
Dan. My name's Dan. And you're in Texas, correct?
Yes, sir.
The situation that you're in, I know that the folks that work for Oxford House have worked tirelessly, and a lot of your state regional leaders have worked tirelessly trying to get the reentry system polished to where it's accessible to the houses. The best advice that I would have for you to try to answer your questions and make your position feel valid, right, is to go out and work with Salvation Armies, homeless shelters, and focus on people that are starting from zero, getting into the houses. Because again, reentry is not just incarceration, okay? Anybody that's needing to reenter society. And until Texas gets those political things lined out to where Oxford House is blanketly approved or even multiple houses approved, just focus on helping those that don't have.
We just got, well, I don't know the young lady for our chapter, Austin just got parole at TDCJ approved. I heard Curtis say that he was the reentry person for Oxford houses as a whole.
No longer. That was
No,
CEO.
okay, I was sorry.
But you come see me after the meeting.
Yes, sir.
All right, after the meeting, come
Yeah.
see me.
My name is Deshaun. I'm from Houston, Texas as well. My question is specifically, it was suggested that to help out with the reentry program and efforts that we're doing was to start working with drug court. I just want to know the process. Do I literally just walk in and say, hey, judge, da-da-da-da-da, which I am willing to do.
Yeah, good luck with that.
But what are the, I was an employee of the county, so I kind of can get through back doors. But once I'm in there, who am I looking for and who am I talking to? And I can take it from there.
Annie, you want to take it first? Talk about what you did there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, first thing I just introduced myself, and then I set up conferences. So in one of our areas, they have a coordinator that's a coordinator of all the courts. So whether it be mental health court, drug court, family court, veterans court, they usually have some type of liaisons between the courts that can direct you. And just, because I am outreach, we've worked out with a bunch of different counties. So I work with 6 different counties, and they have different rules for every county. So in some counties, they've authorized me to have ROI because of HIPAA and different things like that. So so there's that open communication, because they would like us to tell them if one of their participants relapse or if they, have moved out of a home or different things like that. So we should be able to call them and ask, hey, so what did they really get sanctioned for, and things like that. So that's, you know, one of the things that I did. And then just being involved, we have compliance officers. So those are the people between the counselors and the court liaison system. So I just went in there, introduced myself, and then some of the officers in some of my counties, there's actual officers that come by the house and things. So just introducing yourself, you know, seeing and showing up for those events, you know, celebrating those, you know, graduation markers, you know, moving from, you know, the different phases, just making yourself out there. Yep.
And if you, I'm going to give you my email address, and if anybody needs this, just take it down. So it's first initial last name, so it's CFOX, CFOX, at allrise.org. That's ALLRISE.org. Email me, and what I can do is there's a coordinator of all the Houston area drug courts, treatment courts, and I'll just I'll do an introduction. So email me, and then I'll do an introduction, and then follow everything Annie said, and then it's just a relationship building from there. So yeah, just you can email me today or next week or whatever's good for you, and I'll hook you up. Oh, sure. Yeah, it's first initial last name. So it's CFOX, CFOX, at allrise.org. It's ALLRISE. There's no spaces or capitals or anything. .org, yeah. Sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Bo Kelly, and I'm from the state of Colorado. I, too, came from reentry. I guess it's a really important component for me. I guess now I am a outreach representative, but been working in reentry since I got out of prison almost a year ago. I guess somebody had kind of touched on it, but we have such an amazing outreach and reentry team in Colorado. But the one thing that I find most frustrating is the cooperation and the stigmatism that we get from the houses. Because, I mean, there's just kind of a backlash, especially from the houses that are already established. And they try to separate reentry. And I think the guys that we're even trying to place and get out of the Department of Corrections come out with the stigmatism of, oh, that's a DOC guy, and totally separating rather than making him a part of the Oxford House. And I was just trying to figure out how to combat this problem more, because, and any suggestions you might have, because I've tried a lot of different approaches, but yet it seems to be a constant problem in our area.
So you're saying that once they get there, they're still a bit ostracized?
Well, to some degree. I mean, there's definitely a level of people not wanting to even work with reentry in our state. Mm-hmm. And then even once they get there, I don't want to place somebody that comes out of prison into a house where there's already negative feelings or behaviors, because, I mean, we're setting them up for failure at that point.
Absolutely. We have.
All right, so, Michael, you yourself, having been reentry, tell your story. Tell them about yourself. Be the leader. That's what I did in my areas. When I ran into problems like that, I just let them know that I did 7.5 years in prison, and this is where I'm at in my recovery, and this is what Oxford House has done for me. And to really just encourage them that it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter. People get caught and some people don't, and that's as simple as that. We're all here as recovering drug addicts and alcoholics. Mm-hmm. And so just really push yourself, though, in your story, and that will touch people.
We've got 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Peggy Alexander Schultz, and I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I was one of the many that had their hand raised, and I'm a reentry. I graduated drug court back in 2012 after 3.5 years, and without that supervision and accountability, I was high before the dawn of the next day once those charges were dismissed. Fast forward 6.5 years later, and I caught my first felony in December of 2018, and I caught my first PV in January of 2019. DOC helped me get clean, but Oxford House helped me stay sober. And I wanted to give all of you all gratitude, because you all are changing lives of very many people. Thank you all.
My name is Willie. I'm from Oxford House, London Fog, Dallas, Texas. I am one of the North Texas Regional Reentry Chairs, and I was just wondering if you might have any sources for like federal funding or state funding we're trying to get together a bunch of resources and create a resource list to where when these people come into our houses, we have them like, day 1 through 3, get your food stamps, go here to get your birth certificate, driver's license. Are there any state and federal sources that you might have connections with or links to that might be able to help get some of this stuff for these people?
None that I'm going to share. No, listen, out of Texas, I'm using this organization called Clean Cause, and they have helped us with first month's rent. But that's all as far as federal and state funding, no, you're on your own on that. I really don't have a clue.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
One of the things, real quick, in North Carolina, a lot of the houses and chapters contribute monthly into a fund. We call it the Reentry Fund. And out of that fund, we're able to pay the entry fee and a little bit of that equal expense share initially for folks coming home.
Those guys that don't like the reentry folks coming in, they're going to love that idea.
So really quick, recently the state of Texas, both regional associations created a reentry position on that level. By the way, my name's Raquel. And the question I really wanted to ask is, people on the panel, if there's any experience on reentry on the regional level and what role that this, position can play better to serve, the state and stuff like that. We're still kind of trying to figure it out. What our current reentry chair has been doing is just kind of like working on her own city and then kind of seeing what others are doing. But like, what role can the regional association play on reentry and working with reentry?
Well, that's really, I think Curtis, explained it really well. It's like him and Kathleen, they kind of created this position, and you have to build it and network and, make your own, your own schedule, your own pace. But you also, when you have other team members, then you got to really focus so that you're not overlapping each other's work and that you kind of make headway. But do you have any? Yes.
So before I came to Florida, I was working in Louisiana, and they've recently started a reentry association themselves in the past year and a half or so. It's been very successful. I would highly recommend that you find some of those people while you're here and talk to them. But it is really about just getting people to volunteer in their area and meeting as the group bi-monthly and just really hitting all the bases and collectively just deciding what's best for the entire state.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One of the biggest challenges is getting the word out. There's so many people who don't know that Oxford House exists or that they have options when they come home. And so if we're going to be that light that I talked about earlier and run the darkness away, then it's up to you and I to volunteer, go inside the facilities. Introduce yourself to case managers and superintendents of facilities and tell them about Oxford House. Any opportunity that you get, invite these people to see an Oxford House. That's the most powerful tool that you have, is to bring somebody into an actual living, breathing Oxford House, because once they see that model and hear just 1 or 2 stories from the individuals that live there, they're sold.
Thank you. That's all the time we have. I'd like you to thank the panel. Thank you for your participation. Enjoy the rest of the convention. And tonight at the Hospitality Suite, they'll be playing Jeopardy at 8 o'clock.